Now let's take what we've learned about the partition function and probabilities and apply it to real molecules, okay, and atoms. And so we're going to be talking about translational motion and then vibrational motion and rotational motion, all the different things a molecule can do, and even the electronic cloud, the different ways you can put the electrons in a molecule. And so each one of those has an energy equation, and so each one of those is going to have a partition function and probabilities associated with it. Okay. So in this case, we're talking about translational motion, and this is a good simulation of that would be a particle in a box. So we beat that drum really loudly last fall. So you guys know the particle in a box energy equation. So instead of the energy level diagram just being like 0 and 200 for two levels, now we have an equation for the energy levels, and we have a quantum number. Okay, so our energy equation here, again, this partition function is the sum of these Boltzmann factors. I don't have any of the degeneracies in here. For the translational motion, we'll just say they're all singly degenerate. There's not double or triple degeneracy. So G is 1 for all of these. So we need to calculate these for every translational energy level, and we have this energy equation. So now we can put something in there for epsilon. So we put in the particle in a box energy equation divided by KT. So we can see the two pieces there. And now we have this quantum number. Now these energy levels are really closely spaced. And so the nice thing about this is we can go from a sum to an integral if there's only a very little difference between each quantum state. And since we're summing over so many quantum states, we can just say the difference between them is infinitesimal. And if the differences are infinitesimal, that becomes our sort of our x value in doing an integral. So we'll integrate over n. So we can integrate that function with respect to n, the quantum number. And we can sum up all of those energy levels. This is a pretty simple integral, and it comes out to this piece right here. Some of those things, when you integrate, they're pulled out of E and inverted, and so you have h squared on the bottom, Planck's constant, the mass of the particle, KT here, to the 1/2 power, and we've pulled L out. So L was L squared in the top, you take the square root of L squared, and you get L here. And this is nice because this is a partition function. Now it depends upon the mass of the particle, and it depends upon the length of the one dimension. It's a particle in a one-dimensional box, so the length of it being constrained. We could also put this in a cube, and we'll do a three-dimensional box next, but it's very, very simple. Now, this piece here has the units of inverse length, and so they're calling this the thermal wavelength. So this looked a lot to de Broglie, the earlier mathematician, like the de Broglie wavelength, where you have the wavelength and it's the h over p, the momentum of the particle, and Planck's constant. And so they look at this, you see h here, h squared to the 1/2 power, so you have h, and you have this momentum thing, and it looks like the de Broglie wavelength, and so they call this the thermal wavelength, and it has units of length. And so what we're doing is we're comparing the length of the box to the thermal wavelength, and that could be large, it could be small, it depends upon temperature and so on, but that's an estimate for the partition function. And so this is the simplest equation here. The partition function, the T stands for translation, not temperature in this case. We're describing which kind of partition function we have. So the T stands for translation. The 1D means we're just doing a particle in a 1D box at this point, and it's the length of the box divided by the thermal wavelength. And the thermal wavelength is given here. So any questions on what we've done? I know it went fast, but we just did an integral. Instead of doing a sum over every quantum state, we're talking about 10 to the 30 quantum states. We're not going to do a sum. Excel doesn't have that many rows. Okay, so we'll just integrate it with respect to n, and we get this result. Okay, let's make it three-dimensional. Okay, so in this hot situation, we've got this length. Well, you've got a length in x, a length in y, and a length in z, and each one of those three problems is the same problem. And so we just have this result cubed. So we have L, X, Y, and Z. That's the volume. And then we have this thermal wavelength Q. So when you cube something to the 1/2, you have the 3/2 power, which is kind of crazy. It gets crazier. So that's the thermal wavelength. And this is the 1D piece. If you do it in 3 dimensions, you end up with the volume over the thermal wavelength cubed. And volume, it's kind of a pain. I could look at this room and I could say, well, I could calculate the volume, or I could talk about pressure. We could use the ideal gas law. So what if we have PV equals nRT and we solve for V, we get nRT over P. So nRT over P here is the volume divided by the thermal wavelength. Okay, so we got another factor of temperature here. So this 3-dimensional translational partition function is given by all of these variables. And so here it is in its glory. We've got the number of moles. So again, a little bit of equivocation here. On the previous slide, N was the quantum number, okay? But we use the ideal gas law, and in the ideal gas law, N is the number of moles. So this is the number of moles. This is the regular old gas constant. Now it needs to be in units that make sense with all of this other stuff. We have temperature here, and we have temperature here. This temperature is raised to the 3/2 power. So temperature overall is to the 5/2 power. That's probably the weirdest one in all of PChem, that you have a 5/2 dependency on temperature. Okay, in this equation, you have a 3/2 dependency on mass here. You got Planck's constant cubed, which again is 10 to the minus 34 cubed. So that's minus 90 something. You know, it's really, really low. And you have Boltzmann's constant here, 10 to the minus 23 to the 3/2 power. So all and pi thrown in for good measure. Okay. Now this whole thing is unitless. Partition functions are unitless. So if you know that partition functions are unitless, then you can figure out what kind of units you need for the gas constant, what kind of units you need for the pressure. Is it pressure in atmospheres? Is it pressure in pascals? You know. And so I want you to prove for yourself that this mess is unitless. Like what units of pressure, what units of the ideal gas law would you need, or ideal gas constant, to make this thing unitless? Would you need mass in grams per mole, like off the periodic table, or would you need to calculate that with Avogadro's number and get it into kilograms? Probably kilograms. So this is why we have the SI unit system. You want to get everything into SI units and see if it all cancels out. Okay. So that's a fun exercise.
So we just use the gas law because it's easier than the volume?
Then trying to measure the dimensions of the room. Yeah, so essentially I'm substituting nRT over P, so I can measure the pressure in this room very easily. And instead of measuring the volume, I can just measure the pressure and multiply by the number of moles. Now I got to estimate how many moles does the argon, contain, or how does this room. So we can say 1 mole of argon in this room at 1 atmosphere pressure, and then we can calculate this. Okay. So let's do that. Let's stop.